When taking a glance at Daggerheart, it looks like a D&D clone. It has 6 stats with familiar names, and the classes and species are similar to 5e.
You and me? Me?
But honestly, that's where most of the similarities end. Now that I have the final edition of Daggerheart in my hands, this game is much closer to like a Dungeon World 2e or Fantasy Blades in the Dark than an attempt at making yet another alternate version of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Even though it's only recently released, I have a good amount of experience with this game. I participated in the playtests and ran beta versions for months. I've followed the news of the game and seen all of Critical Role's Daggerheart actual plays, and now that the final version has arrived, based on my professional opinion, here is an updated review of Darrington Press's Daggerheart. Let me get my personal thoughts out of the way first. In places, it's elegant, in others, clunky. I don't know if Daggerheart is a great TTRPG, but I do know that for me, for the kinds of games that I want to run, this rule set is pretty much what I'm looking for. Because what I want is a rules medium game with flexible mechanics, robust leveling, and crunchy-ish combat. Most rules medium games can't deliver on the crunch. Can Daggerheart? Is it a D&D killer? Well, that's what we're here to discuss. And why do I want a rules medium game specifically? I'll get into that later. First, my thoughts on the print book. The cover art is nice, the spine feels solid. I dig the purple theme and the double ribbons. The art style throughout is a mix of quasi-cartoony and sketches, and the layout is spacious and readable. My first impression of the content is how little they changed from the final playtest. There were a few things I wanted them to fix. Some they did, some they didn't. I'll talk about those. Let me explain the main mechanic real quick. Instead of a standard D20, Daggerheart uses a Genesis-inspired 2D12 system. One D12 is your hope die and the other is called your fear die. When you attempt a thing, you roll both dice, and if they add up to meet or beat the difficulty number, then you do the thing. If the roll total is lower than the target, you fail to do the thing. If the two numbers match, that's a crit. But here's the trick. If your hope die is a higher number, you succeed with hope. If your fear die is higher, you succeed with fear. Succeeding or failing with hope means you earn a hope point which you can use to fuel moves and abilities. I'll talk more about hope and resource management in a minute. If you succeed or fail with fear, the GM gets a fear point to spend on various moves. So this adds a whole new angle to rolling beyond simple success or failure. Every time you roll with fear, you know the GM is just collecting them, building tension, which means the situation could turn at any moment. So the economy of hope and fear is pretty important, which leads me to one of the things they did not fix from the playtest.
You know what really grinds my gears?
That's group rolls. In D&D, for a group roll, everyone rolls, add modifiers or whatever, then it's all tallied up. It's a little clunky, but it generally works. However, Daggerheart's system is bonkers. To make a group roll, these things need to happen. First, the group nominates a leader for the roll. This is the person who will act as a champion for the group. But first, the way it works, everyone but the leader rolls. Each succeeding individual group member roll will add a +1 to the leader's roll. Each failing individual group roll subtracts 1 from the final roll. So we've already rolled a bunch of dice and done a bunch of math, and we haven't even made the actual group roll yet. We add up those pluses and -1s, and then the leader rolls, adds in the mods, and that is the final result of the group roll. When I playtested this, it was awkward every single time. I eventually just stopped using it and homebrewed my own group roll system, and it looks like I'll have to continue doing that. Okay, that was some criticism, so now let's bring back the vibes.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
And talk about something I love in Daggerheart. The feature I'm probably most excited about is environment stat blocks. Full disclosure, I did not use them when I playtested Daggerheart last year because honestly, I didn't really see the point at first glance. But now that I've had a chance to read the final version and I now understand how they work, I think they're excellent. Environments are a way to combine a location, plot hooks, encounters, secrets and clues, mini-games or special mechanics, and more into one teensy stat block. The Cliffside Ascent is a great example of this potential. It's basically rules to run a skill challenge to climb a steep surface, and you could reuse and recycle this whenever you need it. Environments for the local tavern give you instant story prompts and hooks to throw out for your players with very little prep. And this environment stat block for Outpost Town contains a slew of hooks and encounters for an entire area. I can see environments being useful in two main ways. One, good for new Game Master prep. Some of the worst flop sweat you can have as a new GM is when the party rolls into town and wants to go somewhere you are completely unprepared for. Like, you prepped the tavern, but they decide to go to the market instead. And if you have a market stat block like the one in the book, there's no need to panic. It tells you what to do right there in the text. The other main way I can see this being useful is to give GMs ideas for how to spend fear. Say I want to create a stat block for a temple the PCs are going to. Once there and they start generating fear with unlucky rolls, I need things to spend that fear on as complications for the party. If there's already location-specific ideas in the stat block, then I don't have to improvise them. Bing, bang, boom.
Here we go!
I appreciate how every class has the same 4 resource pools of hit points, hope, stress, and armor. The easiest way to understand them is like Skyrim. Hit points are the red health bar, hope is the blue mana bar, and stress is your green stamina bar. I could go into more depth, but I'm pretty sure you get it. Now we have to harsh the mellow with a little more criticism. One thing they didn't improve is the meager loot selection. Utility gear and magic items are combined into a 60 item list, and there's a separate list of 60 consumables. Granted, a few of these items are extremely cool, like the dual flask. Check that out. I love the idea of a PC flipping a hidden switch to toggle between whiskey and poison during an espionage mission. But it's not enough items, and not enough of them have art. For example, the Tier 1 and Tier 2 weapon lists are nearly the same, but every item in Tier 2 has the word improved added. In Tier 3, that word is advanced, and Tier 4, that word is legendary. Some items have specific names like Hammer of Wrath or Ghost Blade, but I think their unwritten intention here is that GMs are probably going to rename these vanilla items. Like, I'm not giving my player an advanced short bow, that's boring as hell. I'm renaming it to the Bow of Whispers or some crap like that. Along these lines, this game does not have set prices for any items. They frame this as a positive, like, hey, you can decide for your world how much things cost. And that sounds nice, but in truth, you've really just shifted a ton of work to the Game Master. They do give you a little more guidance about pricing with this average cost table compared to the playtest, but they're still asking us to essentially create a whole friggin' economy if we want shopkeepers to offer items at logical prices. I'll just wait for someone on Reddit to come out with a suggested prices spreadsheet like someone did with sane magic item prices for 5e. But enough of this jibber jabber, here's something I like. The combat. I was hesitant about Daggerheart combat since it has no initiative system. You just go whenever you want. And the first time I ran combat, one PC dashed into the fray Leroy Jenkins style and did all the work while the other PCs stood back and watched. And I thought, uh-oh, this isn't working. But by the second combat, the PCs had figured out a rhythm. By combat number 3, they were teaming up, taking turns naturally without issue. It works surprisingly well on the player side. From the GM side, combat was a bit hectic. You could chalk some of that up to my inexperience with the system. But combat is the reason why I think this is not the right game for new GMs. For new players, sure, Daggerheart is aces for new players. But I think new GMs are gonna struggle with this system. 5e combat isn't perfect, but it has a time-tested structure to it based on action economy. Well, Daggerheart just friggin' throws action economy out the window. When it's your quote-unquote turn, you can basically keep taking unlimited actions as long as the dice permit. This means as a GM, you also kind of ignore action economy. You spend fear to spotlight adversaries in combat and have them attack or make moves. If you have a bunch of fear tokens to spend, you could go really hard on the PCs with attack after attack. Or you could choose to back off whenever you want and just pass it to the players because you don't have to spend all your fear on the GM's turn. It gives the GM a large amount of control over the pacing and intensity of a battle, but you kind of have to already know how to do those things. You have to already understand when to push and when to pull back if you want the combat to be balanced. If you care more about narrative than balance, then I wouldn't worry too much about it. The book even states that running combat early on involves a lot of guesswork. Also, PCs have moves and GMs have moves. The game doesn't explicitly say this, but implies there are 2 types of GM moves. literal capital M moves during combat or other high-stakes moments, and looser, lowercase m moves that mean reacting to anything a PC does. When making loose moves, you can spend fear to complicate things, or you could just complicate things without actually spending the fear. The book takes a pretty relaxed tone about this for GMs. It essentially says, don't focus so much on the rules, go tell exciting stories, make it up when you need to, it'll be fine. And they're probably right. Although it'll feel different if you come from the rigid world of 5e action economy. I do like the simplicity of the classes and subclasses. Every class connects to 2 domains, which are sort of like spell lists or skill trees. The Druid class has Sage and Arcana as domains, while the Ranger has Sage and Bone. Since each class has 2 domains, I think this helps with quick party construction if you want to avoid ability overlap. The character sheets are very playbooky, and the sidecar is a neat trick for new players to learn the game. Just slide it out like a pen and paper tooltip. Look at this technology. Real quick, could you hit the like button and subscribe below? It only takes a second and it really helps out. Make sure to click all next to notifications. You're going to love this channel or your money back. Stress can be used as a form of social hit points in roleplay situations. This game doesn't have a lot in the way of social mechanics, but take a look at this Petty Noble stat block. The Petty Noble has an ability to summon 1d4 guards by marking a stress. Well, if you can force that Petty Noble to mark all of their stress during roleplay with something like the Troublemaker ability, then that Petty Noble can't call the guards anymore. Also, I really love how compact the enemy stat blocks are. The motives and tactics section is great because each one gives you a few simple tag words to both roleplay the adversary and operate them in combat. Take the Jagged Knife Bandit, for example. Escape, profit, steal, throw smoke. Just that one word profit tells me so much. It tells me this NPC is motivated by coin. It tells me they're for hire, and they might even switch sides in the middle of a fight. They're probably more interested in ransoming PCs than killing them. And you can get all that inspo from one tag in the stat block. Speaking of tags, to answer one of my thesis questions, I don't think this is a D&D clone, because it owes quite a lot more to Powered by the Apocalypse than D20 systems. Blades in the Dark's John Harper is one of Daggerheart's authors, and it shows. Daggerheart uses countdowns just like Blades has progress clocks. Daggerheart lists Genesis System, Cypher System, 13th Age, and 4th Edition D&D specifically as influences. Now let's talk real quick about the spell and ability cards. When this game was announced, I thought these cards were gimmicky. I thought it was an add-on to inflate the price of the game and you would never need them again after character creation. But I was wrong about that on both counts.
I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment.
The cards are crucial and they're great. Having something tactile in front of you to manage your powers and abilities and spells is fantastic. Also, they're essential for resource tracking. Take this invisibility spell, for example. When you cast it, you put a number of tokens equal to your spellcasting trait mod literally on the card. Each time the invisible person takes an action, you remove 1 token. Last token gone, the spell ends. About the powers and spells in general, you can clearly see the 4th edition D&D influences here, and the high-level abilities don't seem that game-breaking. This version of Chain Lightning is way more fun than the 5e version. Near the back of the book are 5 sample adventures, which are called campaign frames here. This video is already longer than I wanted, so I'm not going to go into detail about those, but I will say this, the variety of their adventure selection is genius. Each one of these campaign frames is in a different genre, highlighting how flexible the system is. And also modular, because each one of these adventures comes with mechanics specific to the frame. Like there's a Delicious in Dungeon inspired frame with cooking mechanics, and a Mad Max sci-fi adventure where all magic is technology and there are subsystems for writing coded messages and adding cybernetic augmentations to the PCs. But remember back at the beginning of the video when I talked about how I wanted rules medium? Those campaign frame subsystems are a great example. Here is why I love Daggerheart. I want a system agile enough that I can put in my own homebrew without it collapsing under the weight. 5e is too overstuffed already to homebrew unless you keep it painfully simple. I want to homebrew a skill challenge system for Daggerheart. I want to make a carousing system. I want to make a travel system. I want to tweak to my heart's content without worrying about it feeling bloated to my players. In conclusion, is Daggerheart a 5e clone? Nah, I think we can see it's not. Is it a 5e killer though? No, probably not that either. It could chip away at 5e's dominance, but that depends on how hard Critical Role pushes it. I think it's likely to siphon off quite a few of what some people call theater kids from 5e, since Daggerheart is a more narrative-leaning game. Will it become a household name? Unlikely. But could it rival Shadowdark as a top-tier D&D alternative? I think so, yes. Anyway, this is GM Jim. I'm gonna go play.